And I want to say to you folks online, we have questions and we have a lot of paperwork. And if any of you would like to have some of those questions sent to you, we would be glad to do it. All right, we have some interesting things tonight. What I'd like to do tonight is in chapter 6, verse 1. Instead of having an exposition right now, I want to just read these first 9 verses. That's all we're going to go. I'd like to read those, and then I want to make some comment, and probably we won't have time, but then I'll pass out the questions so you can work with them, but I'm going to go over these 9 verses next week individually. Now, why am I doing that? Well, there's so much here. I just want us to work with it so that we have no question. This is good stuff, folks. But let's read first, and we'll see how it goes. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will, doing service as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. And you masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him. So that's as far as we'll go. It'll probably take us a couple of weeks to have familiarity with them. Understand now that this is a continuation, and I want you to see that. In chapter 5, we dealt with those that were overcomers. That was part of the family. And if you look back in the first part of chapter 5, you realize he was still dealing with this family thing. And if you look back at chapter 4, it was then 2. Now, while we're there at chapter 4, in case you are, notice verse 1. Now, we've looked at this verse before, but I want to mention something. I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you, that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you're called. I want to make the point, just one point. It is the cross that is in the midst of the family structure. We've got to understand what the cross does. The cross puts an end to me. Now, we call that in Paul's writings, reckoning self, indeed dead unto sin. Jesus said this, he will deny self. This is in Matthew and Mark and Luke. He will deny himself and take up his cross, notice the cross, and follow me. You understand, when the cross, the function and quality of the cross, when that is working in the midst of the family structure. That's the point. Now, and we're going to do this. I'm going to talk to you about this for 2 weeks. When the cross is in the midst of the family structure, then we realize that's going to give the Lord an opportunity to do His work in the midst of the family. It's so vital. I can't tell you how important I think this family structure. If the children are not in order in the family, nothing is going to work in that family. You understand? The family will not prosper. You'll have the law enforcement coming in and out. You'll have judicial activity going on, and it'll be all kinds of trouble. We're going to get into that, especially the Lord willing next week. But I just want you to see what it means with this thought of the cross. When you have the cross in the midst of the family structure, then you don't have any one person attempting to take over and have his way. And now you'd say, because why? Because the father is the head of that family. And we're going to talk about that's a vital reality that we should happen. But I learned something this week, and I'm going to take some time to do it. I see it's 6:30 already. You might want to take some notes on this. I want to take a look at verses 1 through 9 that we just read of Ephesians 6 from a larger perspective. In other words, the large picture. You've heard people say, I couldn't see the large picture for I was too taken up with the small picture. Well, that's what we're talking about. Turn to Job 28, verse 28. This is an interesting verse. Would you on your own read at least the last half of Job 28 on your own? Because he's that whole part is that where do you find wisdom? And he said, it's not here, it's not here, it's not here. And you'll see that. That's why I want you to read it. But look at verse 28. And unto man he said, behold the fear of the Lord. That is wisdom. Now, let me make the association so you'll realize there's real value here. In these first 9 verses of chapter 6 of Ephesians, you're having, here is how the family structure works. This is how it works from God's viewpoint. This is wisdom. You see the connection I made? This is wisdom, the way it's supposed to work. And folks, the family structure won't work until the cross is in the midst of it. And then also this. So, behold the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. What is wisdom? The fear of the Lord. Think about it. You'd think, well, surely wisdom is me having gone to some university for 10 years and I understand all of these things. No. And it talks about that in that 28th chapter of Job, but now notice the rest. And to depart from evil is understanding. That is powerful. We're talking about sanctification. That's what this chapter 6 is doing for the family, sanctification. To depart from evil is understanding. All right. I want to give you the meaning of these words.
I don't want to.
Go ahead. It's all right.
Here, to me, it spoke to me. Where he said, "Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom." You go to where it says, "To depart from evil is understanding." That depart is to turn off or forsake. And evil is what is contrary to God's will.
You see, that's the thing. I appreciate that. Man left to his own. Now that's what we're saying. If you want God in your family, if you want God's blessing in your family, you've got to do it God's way. That's wisdom. Now you see, and you men, as a leader and authority in your family, you have to see to it that your family is departing from evil. That's your business. That's the thing you're supposed to do. But let me give you some meanings. So while we're there, thank you, turn to Psalm, it's 19. Psalm, it's further comment on the same subject. Psalm 19, and we're going to go to verse 9. Now notice this, the fear of the Lord, and we need to read this chapter again, all of us, but I don't have time. The fear of the Lord, notice, is clean. And look what else it does. The fear of the Lord endures forever. If you want to do something that is lasting, especially, let me address you fathers. If you want to do something that is workable for your family and lasts, wisdom will do it. Look what it says. The judgments of the Lord are true. Now, what the fear of the Lord opens my heart to judgments. It causes me not to run from them, or true and righteous altogether. Okay, also now look at James chapter 3. James chapter 3, and we'll read verse 13. Who is a wise man? Now this is so good. I just love it. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge? Now, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I didn't plan to here, but I want to mention it. Wisdom and knowledge are not the same. You all know that. So knowledge without wisdom puffs up, or knowledge without love puffs up. All right, let's go on. Who is a wise man endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation, manner of life, his works with meekness of wisdom. Do you realize what that said? If a man is wanting to show what he is, what God's doing, he's to show it out of it says, which are made after, let me get it.
Good conversation.
Yeah, good conversation.
Behavior.
Yes, conversations. If that man's life is involved with sanctification, guys, here we go. You see, we're talking about all of these scriptures that we're talking about are talking about the same thing. They're telling us the same thing. And it's verse 13. If a man is endued with knowledge among you, let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness. Men, you don't have to be macho. You you don't have anything to prove. Next week, I'm going to talk to you men about your authority in the family. And the thing that I'm going to say is, you don't have to run roughshod over your kids. You don't have to be loudmouth. You don't have to be the big He-Man. It says here, show meekness in meekness. Do you know you don't have to be all of those things that we think of as men. You go to your children, you correct your children, you don't raise your voice, and you correct them in love. And those kids will hear that, they'll get it, they'll have understanding, and this is called sanctification. And it's a most wonderful, wonderful thing. And let's read further. But if you have bitterness, bitter envy and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the other. Now we have some more. This wisdom, the wisdom of natural man, descendeth not from above, but is earthy, sensual, and devilish. So you can't put it on, guys. You got to get this from the Lord. You can't play around with it. For where envy and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. Guys, hear me. If you, as head of your family, keep peace in your family, and if there's anyone in your family that is not at peace in the correct way, you're the one to correct it. You don't go and yell at them. You're not big macho. You go and speak to them in the power of the blessed Holy Spirit. And when you do that, notice what it says. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure. That's your authority. Then peaceable, gentle. See, that's the way you're going to approach your family. Peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated. You see, when you go to your children, you're instructing, if they know, well, Dad will let me talk to him. I can talk to him and explain. And see, you know what that does? That shows you that those children are listening. That's what you're after. Because you've gone to, if you go to your children in anger, if you discipline them in anger, they think that's the way to do it. They don't know. They're learning. If you go to them gently, in peace. Now, I'm speaking to your fathers. You're the one that's supposed to do this. You go peaceably to them and you talk to them. You don't make requests of them that they can't fulfill. You tell them this is what you want, and you say, well, will that always work? The God will give you authority, and it's going to work in your family. It's a beautiful thing. Let me read some more. And good fruits without partiality and without hope. The fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. I could stay there all day. It's a beautiful portion of Scripture. But I want to tell you, this is sanctification. Guys, you can do it. You can have God so working in your life that you'll have power and authority in your family. Now, I can say to the older men, you've got grandkids, and you have power with them. You have the ability to express power. You know what your authority in the family is intended by God to accomplish? You're teaching your children how to follow God. You see that? It's a beautiful thing. This is such a powerful, this chapter 6 of Ephesians is such a powerful thing, and I realize we're not going to get there, but there's more.
Now, before we go on, there's one thing I would like to say here.
Go ahead.
Up there in 13 where it says that with meekness of wisdom, that right there is prudent. Part of this is prudent, not push of ill advice.
What verse are you on?
In 13.
Oh,
That's really good.
Not push with ill advice. See,
You don't have to force your rule in the family. You get it through love.
this down here below, and easy to be entreated, is not difficult to deal with.
You can see, guys, all of this, you see how important this is for the family structure? What's going to happen if every time your kids do a little something wrong, you shout and create troubles and all of this mess? You know what you're doing? You're making those kids think that that's the way to handle trouble.
and that God handles it that way.
And they think God does it that way. And God doesn't do it that way. I can tell you He doesn't. This we read there in James, God is peaceable, gentle. And you are to be that way, you men. Don't be afraid. Just because you're bigger than your kids, don't think that it's that macho image that they need. No, it's the image of the power of God that those kids need. And they'll listen to you. The kids will get it. And there's more. Keep your hat on. We're going to go.
That love and humility is way at the top.
That's right. Always meekness, gentleness. That's what's going to cause you as a man, head of the family, to be able to have genuine, God-given rule. It's not by yelling at the kids. That's not the way to do it. Don't do that. All right. Now notice, what did we say was the expression of wisdom in Job? Fear is what wisdom is. Let me give you the meaning of the word fear. This is what wisdom is. It's reverence for God. It's even dread. Strong fear is what it means. It means to revere or a reverential trust. That's what fear is. Fear is not, I'm afraid and I'll go hide. That's not what fear is. Fear is a reverential trust. Now, hold your spurs on. Do you know where all this comes from? Comes from God, of course, but it's called morality. Now, let me explain. About 3 weeks ago, I was listening to a preacher that I respect. Now, this particular preacher is Calvinist, and I don't like that, and I don't agree with his Calvinism, but he's a good preacher. So I don't do it very often, but I was listening to him. He was teaching on the practical things. In fact, it was in chapter 4 of Ephesians. And he says, I want you to see the connection here, he said, of all of these individual instructions, their connections with morality. Now, I don't have time to go into a lot of detail. There's a whole lot here, but I want you to get enough of this to cause you to think. Look at chapter 4 of Ephesians, verse 28 of chapter 4 of Ephesians. See what I'm doing here? I'm showing you a connection. This is what study does for you. It says, let him that stole steal no more, but let him labor with his hands. What are we talking about? Morality. See, that's morality. Now, we often think of morality as something sexual, and it is, but it's a whole lot more than that, guys. Please understand that. It's a whole lot more than just sexual misconduct. It's this. And when I refuse to accept the wisdom of God, now we're talking about Job, we're talking about James, and we're talking about all Psalms. When I refuse to accept, that's why I'm pointing this out to you, the wisdom of God, then I'm not going to be able to have the real essence of wisdom. Now watch. If I yield to God, God is going to cause my attitude to be full of morality. And we don't associate that with learning and with studies, but I want to tell you something. Knowledge without wisdom, knowledge without love, puffs up, has no value. The knowledge of your studies here is of no value if it isn't mixed with the wisdom of God. What is that wisdom? It's a moral understanding of how God works. Folks, it might be a little hard for you to see. I'll show you a little more. It'll give you enough to work with in understanding. This morality is so real. In chapter 6 we have it. Notice, if we think that's not part of learning, now see, what I'm connecting morality with is the basis of learning. I'm saying to you, if you have learned knowledge of the Scriptures, but it hasn't come with sanctification. See, I'm showing you that this is all goes back together. If you don't have the sanctification with it, what do you have? Head knowledge. No value. It's no good. And they say, oh, surely there's some good. No, it puffs up. It makes you think you're better than everybody else. Hear me. The wisdom of God is going to come to you. God is going to approach you in cleanness and meekness and morality. And he's going to mix it with knowledge. That way your knowledge is real. Your knowledge won't give you a puffed up head. It's going to give you meekness and so forth and so on. See, my time is up. I knew that was going to happen. But one more. The word understanding. This is also in Job. You remember? He said, understanding is to remove yourself from evil. Remember that? All right. See, now I want to show you something. You know what it means? Understanding is knowledge. But what's it associated with? Removing evil from yourself, from your life. Then it's also intelligence. And this is interesting. Listen to this. This intelligence is plus perfection. They go together here. Perfection. And it also means to know, perceive, and Daryl hears that word prudent. This understanding is prudent. And that's, you see, you saw that elsewhere. Folks, when you study the Scriptures, you're going to realize that all of it works together. But you know what is the basis? It's amazing for me to listen to what the Scripture says and say, this is wisdom, to fear the Lord. What a challenge that is.